In this video help, we're going to cover the meal order screen in detail. In the last overview video of the meal order screen, we should have seen the basic information and the basic overview of why this screen was created and how it's used. Let's go ahead and start in the upper left-hand corner and go down through the application. Now what I want to point out is this is being done through the Xcode simulator. This is not the actual iPad screen, but most of the functionality that you're going to be seeing here is almost exactly the same thing you would see on an iPad or an iPhone. In addition to that, the information that is being collected and how it's used can also be done on an iPad, on an iPhone, on Mac and Windows computers, or on the cloud with a multi-user approach. And that can be explained by contacting the developer on the developer website, and in detail we'll go through how a application is used with a multi-user. Okay, let's start at the upper left and move across. The first thing, as we've covered somewhat already, is the app navigation. And basically what we're going to say is that we're on the mail order screen, and these four blue field buttons are what we're actually working within right now. And also these are being addressed in this screen as far as other additional information that is provided in this screen. And then we have some different layouts that are over here called the table status and the menu manager, which is this menu manager here. And then the table status information and a lot of the stuff that's used for controlling scrollers. Now scrollers are information that is included where you have an access to it to change the way it actually looks and what's happening in those scrollers. So let's address one of those. Anytime you see an underlined header in a field, like you see these here, and the tax rate and the menu items and the paid with, these are all items that when you look at this up here, you'll see that these are edited. So, and I'll explain why. In a scroller, like for example, if you click on a field where there's a scroller, you're going to get this kind of a view where you have to scroll things. Now with the iPad and the iPhone, this is typical. With a Mac, PC, or cloud approach to things with a Windows, that's not the way they work. You can actually use drop downs, and they're able to add an information to the field. Now if you needed to edit those fields like they're set up here, then you would use one of these lists. It allows you to go in. For example, let's take a look at the restaurant meal status. You can create your own inputs. This application will come with its default stuff in here. And if you want to change these, edit them or whatever, for example, if I click over here or you tap on the iPad or iPhone, that would give you the ability to edit this field. Now, one of the things with lists where you're changing scrollers, when you first start using them, don't start changing them until you do a little bit of work with the application. And if you're going to change them, the change is permanent, and you should do it when you first start using the application. Or you can add new items in here by clicking on Add a Record. It'll put a blank record up here. You would go ahead and type it in this field, and it would then show up in the portal record down here for the item that you added. Now these are typical things in this particular record for meal status, where the things that are happening at the table can be edited either by the kitchen, the server, or somebody that's approaching a machine like a manager or whatever and looking at information and changing things as far as in the actual field on the layout that we're using. For example, in this case, the order meal screen is where we're working. These items could be used in there. And what the status does, it gives anybody that's looking at it an idea or a situation that is currently in view. And for example, add to an order, clean a table, just seated. All this information is status information, and you may want to add your own depending upon the way you use your business and manage the floor in all the tables. But let's go back to the cook, the meal order, and talk about how things actually work within this screen. So first of all, we did navigation. The next thing we're going to be doing is if you click on the do actions, these are actions that you can take in the actual screen that you're working within. I'm going to be coming back to this separately and explaining each one of them. But in these actions, the first one is add record. Now there's only a few screens in the entire application that have an add record button in them. Do not do what I'm going to show you here. So for example, if I click on something down here, you'll see a plus and a minus. This is add a record and delete a record. Do not use these. The way this application is designed, you do never have to use these icons as far as adding or deleting a record. In an emergency, if you had to delete one, you could, but I have buttons on the screens where it's supposed to be appropriately to delete records. One of the other things is you can move through the screens like tab order. If you say previous and next or top of record, it will do those three things for you. Here, when you're looking at this particular screen, what it does is it shows you what they call the found set. This means the current records that are in selection, or the records in selection as it's called. And of the records that are in the application, there's 2 records right now, and we're on the first record of the 2 records. If we had done a search and reduced the amount down to 1 record, then it would show 1 omitted record and 1 in the found set. Now obviously you can get to hundreds of records or more easily over a period of time. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be using this right here. If you click on it, it'll go 1 record as far as up and 1 down as far as in the record set, so you could change in the screen. But I also include in the Do Action menus buttons that allow you to go forward and backward. And all I have to do to get out of here is to say done. But I want to bring to your attention that this screen may change depending on what type of field you're in. It may look different than this one. For example, in this case, if I tap on it, I have an alphabetic screen like you see on most applications. And if you start tapping in information, it's going to give you options here that you can click or tap immediately to put the word into the field where you're working. So as you're adding information and you see the word that you're starting to type, you can very quickly tap in there to finish that word, whatever it might be. You can also change certain fields, bold, italic, and underline if you need to. Appropriately, I wouldn't change them unless it really is necessary to highlight the record for one reason or another. You also have a copy. You can copy the data in that field if you need to using this. Obviously, you can say you're done with this particular record, or you can just drop the keyboard off the screen and leave the done here in case you want to do other things and see data that's going on below here as far as you're adding it, or going from previous to next records, or looking at the current records in selection, or you can click to the next record here. Now recall though, I'm going to click off to put that away. There's a lot of stuff in here, and I said I would come back. A search is where you're going to actually go and change the current records in the found set. We'll go into this in detail when we actually do searches. You start the search. What it'll do is it'll flip the screen over and put little magnifying glasses in all the fields, and you can pick one or more elements in the fields, except for in the portal. Only the records above in the case. Portals you cannot search in. Multi-line records are not searchable. You have to do it in the individual record by going to its portal. And then you click this button to go there. Once you're into the portal record, then you can go ahead and use the same drop down for actions and do those particular actions. When you actually enter data in and you're ready to now go search for those records, you say perform the search, and what it'll do is it'll do the actual look and bring up the records in selection for whatever values you entered in the fields. We'll talk a little bit about that more when we're doing actual work as far as searching for things. If I wanted to go to the next record in this set, I could go ahead, next, prior, first, and last records. If I had done a search and I had a group of records in the current selection and I wanted to bring back all the records to be seen, I would show this, and I would click show all records, and it would bring them all back. If I was on a report or I was in a list view, I could say, for example, if I highlight a record by putting it in something in the field, clicking back out, for example, click out here. Now I want to do a do action. I could say omit a record. Whatever record I clicked into, especially on a list view or report, I could say omit a record, and it would omit that record I was viewing and leave all the rest of ones in the found set on the screen. Then what I want to do, maybe if I want to switch and go to show omitted only and show all the records that I omitted from the found set, and now it would reverse and show only the omitted set. The next one would be the print setup. The print setup is only for the Mac, Windows, and the cloud. So it's not going to do anything. As you see here, it doesn't do anything. If you go down and you say print records, now you're back in the world of using the same thing on all the devices, including the iPad and iPhone, where you want to print information. And for example, you can just go ahead and straight out pick records. In this case, I could say pick the current record, and if I click over there, it'll say the current record or the found set. Everything in the found set would be printed. blank records as formatted, blank records with underlines. This is really superfluous. It is not going to really be useful to you. It's not used in every application, but it's still in the dialog used for it. It's not really that appropriate. Number of pages. If you have a bunch of pages, like say for example you're in a list view and it would have about 5 or 6 pages and you only want to print maybe page 1 or 2 or 3, if you put the page number in there in the range, like print page number 1 or from page 1 with a comma and then the number of pages you want to print, it'll print those. Normally, if you're printing all records in the current set, it'll just print them and be done with it. And then the page range in this case is showing you the page range, like from 1 to 5, or 5 only, or maybe 1 only, or whatever it might be the way you want to print. Right now it's set up to print all pages. Then the page size, depending upon the country or the way you're going to print, you would go ahead and use this. And you can also print and set up for, say for example, I'm doing a custom print for a 3-inch wide tape that would print out to a tape printer, or like a thing for a computer printout from a console that is using the Card Strike, where it's printing out those slips like you see at fast food restaurants. Then that particular thing, the printer you actually picked when you're doing the actual printing would be the one that would give you that particular size for the screen. You can scale it if you have to. You can change the orientation from portrait to landscape, and then you can set the dots per inch for the printer. You can do less than or greater than. What you can't do is you can't exceed what the actual printer can do. PDFs. PDFs, you can view it on the screen. You can actually email one, or you can create a PDF and save it to your device. In the case of a Mac or Windows device or the cloud, you could actually save a record to the desktop. Okay, let's go back over here. We pretty well covered everything that's related to the print, so we're going to cancel out of here. The next thing we're looking at is the table, and this also is one of these underline things where if you click on it, you can create your tables as far as the tables in your restaurant from number 1 to whatever it is. You also can ad lib depending on the style of business, the way you're doing your tables. Maybe you have number 1 patio and you have another one, number 1 in someplace inside. You can actually differentiate from tables, but in most cases you want to keep them sequentially numbered to make it a smarter and easier way to manage your information. You can do it if you need to and maybe change the way that it's set up. It's your option to set them up the way you want to. And in this case, all these lists that you're looking at, these are the ones that have this where you can add a record to them. In this case, in these, I did not add the button over here. I made it easier so it takes less time. You can just click on these scrollers when you're creating them and just say add a record. It would make a blank field up here so you can add the next item. Okay, let's go back to the meal order. The next thing is this table over here is the table status. Now this table status is actually controlled by these particular fields right here in the set. And what happens is as you are actually creating the situation where you're working within the order, when you're doing the order, you have these fields over here. These are automatically put in. You would pick with a drop down. You would pick the server who's actually doing this, and you can add server names and edit these to what they need to be appropriately. And then what happens, as you click on this field, it'll offer those to you so you can pick the current server who may be themselves doing that. This whole section in here is something that was done in applications in years gone by, and I'm reintroducing it. And basically what this does, this is for management, to manage how things are going on within their restaurant and introducing trends and being able to track this information. Basically the way this works is when you have a table and you start the order, say you're standing there with the iPad and you're taking the order, what you would do is if you tap or click on the order time, you would start just as you're coming up to the table and you're going to take the order, you would tap on this blue field. It'll automatically add the time. It's doing this in relation to the time that was seated when the actual start over here started, where either the people at the concierge desk, when they come into the restaurant and they are starting to send the person to the table, they put the seated time in here. When they create the actual work order for that table when they're going to that table. And what happens, this puts the time in. The next event is when you actually order something, and you're actually adding order data down here. And what that does is when you start the order, you click here, and what it does is it takes the difference between when you started the order and how long it took for the table order to start. And in this case, it was 19 minutes and 3 seconds. Then you took the order, and when you start serving the table, you click this second one, which is the serve time. And from the 19 to 26 gives you the information is from the time you took the order till it actually started serving the order was 26 minutes and 15 seconds. The next one is the paid time. The paid time is when you click it again, and this is when maybe the people have gone from either if you're taking the payment at the table and you're doing the card strike, you would touch this. But if you're sending them to a desk where they're actually going to pay for this, you would go ahead and then click the paid time, and that would say that 49 minutes from the start over here is the time when they actually are paying and getting ready to leave. And then as they're leaving and the table is actually cleared and is available and cleaned, the table's been cleaned, you would click this one, and then it would say 1 hour and 4 minutes after they were there, the table is actually cleaned and ready for the next person. And what's going to happen as you're doing the available thing here, it's going to change this from occupied to available. And another way that's done is when they actually pay the amount that's going to be paid using the keyboard or the pop-up menu here, you put in the amount paid here in this field. These already are calculated for you based on the meal. What it's going to do, it's going to show you the balance that's due here. And for example, I'm going to back this out so you can see what happens. I'll back it out, click off, and you'll see that when it's highlighted in red, this meal has not been paid for yet. As you add the amount in here, and you'll see where it says the table is now occupied. It hasn't been paid for yet. As soon as the server takes or presents the payment and takes either a credit card or cash, and then goes ahead and completes the payment and adds the amount, in this case 7.34. Now I'm going to show you what happens. I'm going to take the 4 out, or the actually whole 34 cents, and you'll see that it shows a balance of 34 cents, and it kept it in red. Anything up to 5 cents, because there's a rounding error maybe or something in the actual information that's put in, up to 5 cents, this thing will, and after 5 cents, it will automatically turn red. If you put in 34 cents now, and then go ahead and tap off, you'll see that it brings it up to 0. And then you have the paid, how was it paid? And you can edit this, American Express, cash check, MasterCard or Visa, and you can add other things in there if you want to, like coupons and whatever, by clicking on the paid with, and you can add that information as far as what and how this is actually paid for. If there's a tip introduced to this particular record, you want to put the tip amount in there at the time that you're going to pay it, as far as if you bring the primary slip to the table that you printed out what the amount is, and say, for example, they write on it that you're going to give you a tip, you would put the tip collected at the table so that it's included in the amount that they pay for. Now, if a table where they leave cash on the table, that's different. You take the cash and go with the original amount without any tip collected in here. This is really, the tip collected is really used when you're actually taking it, say, for example, on a card, or you're taking cash and they give you a tip amount based on it's over the amount. You want to enter the tip so that it raises the amount of the patron's amount that's going to be paid and the amount that is actually taken in as far as paid amount. And with a tip amount in there, and I'll show you this, if you back it out, watch how it changes these fields. They go back to the original amount without having the actual paid amount in there with the tip. So if I put the tip back in, the 734 will be more relevant. So I put in the 50 cents, and of course that's just an example, but if I put it back in, it's going to bring it back up to the balance the way it should be. Now if you're using either a check, they're paying with a check, or they're paying with a credit card, and this is kind of important if you have a business where you need to maybe sometimes go back and find out what card was used if there's an incident or an issue. You take the last 4 digits on the card and put the last four in here. That way if somebody hands you a card when they had a protest about something about food or paying the bill, you can look at the card and make sure that the card that they're saying they paid with is the actual one that was used to make this payment. So that gives you a follow-up as far as the information is concerned. This is all stuff that is very good for you in your business to manage and keep under control all the things that are going on. Now these three fields here will vary depending on what you put into the portal record down here. And I'm going to go ahead and show you that now. We created meals up here in the meal manager. And what we did is we provided information, and I'm going to pop over here and click on this field, and you'll see that I created meal number 1, where I put an ID number on it, and then I put the actual item that is going to be served. In this case, chicken deluxe with cheese, crispy fries, small, medium, and large. This is just an example. Now in a Chinese restaurant is where you'll see a lot of this, where they numerically put numbers depending on where they are as far as maybe they're going to have hors d'oeuvres or something like that. And there could be a number range, like for example, everything from 1 to 12 is not an entree. It's something that's going to be something that can be served differently. You can break these up in whatever way you want in the numerics of this way this is set up. You actually have the ability in the meal options menus over here for a meal manager to set up and actually put in whatever you want. Now this is not included on this screen because once you set these up, you're probably not going to touch them that much. You're not going to be adding information to it that often. And you have a listing over here, which we're going to cover later, that shows you all the items that are listed in your meal options. And I'm going to show you that you have that on this screen, but it's not meant to add them. It's just meant if you have to look them up, and we're going to be covering that in a second. There is a 3-inch invoice for printing for the food payment, where you're taking the patron money for the actual meal that they consumed. And then there's an order report, which is more of a management item, where you're managing information and looking at it for historicals and trends as far as what has been served, when it's being served, and how often it's going to be served. Those are the kind of things that are important for you to understand. We're talking about all these lists here, and we also have a thing called the seating status, which is a status thing that we look at and we'll cover this later in different screens, where we have a seating status. Now, let's cover the last few things, which would be some more information about the portal and how data is entered. No matter what you pick over here as far as the item, that is what is the meal option that you're going to be looking at as far as what people have asked for at the table. The meal items quantity. Now here's a situation where you can take individually, a person is asking for an item, and you can put it in here. As long as it's all going to be paid on the same ticket by the same person, you can enter it as many times as you want, and you're not restricted to showing it one time. You could have 3 people that want this deluxe chicken burger if you wanted to, and put 3 of them in here. Or you can just say, if you're going to do this, it's probably more efficient to take them one at a time as you're walking around the table if there's multiple people. But if there's only 1 or 2 people, and they're going to be 2 people, say for example, and they both want the same thing, you could put 2 in here, or you can break it out separately if you want to. You have that option. Once you select it, it'll automatically enter this. It'll default to 1. It'll have a status in here. We talked about the meal status. These are typical things depending on the size of your business and how you're going to organize information within your business. Say, for example, your kitchen is actually changing the status. And for example, orders at pickup. They want you to take the orders that are ready for pickup. The order was placed so that the kitchen knows that this is a complete order item, and you've put them into the place situation like we're showing here right now. If the order was served as you're walking away, you can change the status here on that particular table to served. And that way, anybody in the management can take a look at the business and all the tables that are occupied and see where they're currently at. If you're serving drinks when you first come up, and you're serving a drink at the table or drinks, and that's what the status is, and you're putting a drink in there. If they're a charged drink, you could put them in here, for example, if it's wine or it's lemonade or whatever. You could do so serving drinks as far as those statuses that are there before you actually take the meal order. And that way you're building on this as you're going by showing the drinks first, and then you're showing the actual items when you come back where they're taking the order. You have the server get order in this particular case. If they want you to come back and they're going to do a second group of orders, you have the server getting an order, and that could be getting a second order. So if there's something either from the kitchen or some other, like the bar or whatever, you can actually introduce this to the bar where you're still standing at the table, and the server, when he comes to the bar, that would be ready to put the order into the bar, or if you're really organized, the bar server could actually have these things on his screen where he sees bar orders and have the drinks prepared when the server comes over to pick them up. You can see by the statuses here, you can also do things like table cleaned after you've taken the payment. You can put it, the table is being cleaned in this case, and that is a status that you could put in here, and as it changes, and it's getting ready for, you've already taken the money, you've already been paid, and now you want the table cleaned, and that's what the status is currently. So that's all in the table status up here as well. And this particular thing has two screens. You have the one in here where you can edit it from here, and what this is the actual status itself that is changed and shown at the, say for example, you have the reception desk when people are coming in and sitting and waiting for their next table to be cleared. This can be set up by the server to show this table now is available, it's been cleaned, and the server says the next person is available. And what this does is it's for this date at this time, and then the status is changed here to either available, being cleaned, or occupied. And for example, when the server comes in and says that it's occupied, that is the current status of that table at that time. And as they complete all the things they're doing, they're changing the status so the people at the reception desk can seat the next person as soon as the table is cleaned. There is also another screen for the people that are working the reception desk, and that particular one is the one we were just talking about a second ago, where you're looking at the pop-up here, and you have your seating status list. This is this table where it shows all the tables in the restaurant and how the status is going right now. So actually what happens if you're sending somebody to a table, you can create a new order and then change it to the status here to being cleaned, available, or occupied. If it's occupied and you're putting somebody to sit, you could have already created the order for that particular table and then signed the server. Or if you want to run the business the way that you want the server to do this information, it's appropriate to how you want to do it as far as organizing your company. Okay, and if you look at the meal order list, in this particular case, this is information mostly for management that is created when you actually create the different things at the table on the order screen. You do not have to come here to do this, to look at it, but if you needed to, you could come into this screen, and we'll cover this a little bit later on how to use that screen. So let's go back to meal order and finish the last few things. As you add the quantity, the actual meal cost is taken from the meal options plan where you actually created the meal. If you're going to add a tax to it, you could use the tax and put it in there or not, depending on the situation that you're going to work with. And of course, it'll calculate the tax if you add a tax. If not, it'll calculate the row sum for this row, and then it'll change it up here as far as what it'll automatically add and calculate this for you above. It'll add the tax, it'll put the base in there, and whatever the food cost is, add the tip, and of course you can see the information here, how it's created. I said it before, there is a different image for each item that you have in your menu options, and in this case I didn't add one because it's a blank row. If you want to go see the portal record where the information for this is, and say you had to delete a row, and this happens periodically where you had somebody that selected something and they wanted it ordered, and then they changed their mind because somebody else said, well, I want the other thing. And you say, okay, well, you can go back over here, go to the portal, and you can delete that row record if you want to out of the portal by clicking the delete over here. So that it would eliminate that item, and then you can go back into the meal order, and that row will disappear over here. You do not delete records in the actual portal here. You only do it in the portal here, so it updates the math and calculations for the actual order. Okay, and then the menu manager. If you needed to see and didn't know, and maybe you're a new employee and you pop this up and you need to know what's actually going to be served and the actual number that you might see here, then what you want to do is make sure that you have that as far as the options that you have for those meals. You could be looking in here and seeing what's available if you're now just in the process of memorizing, or you want to maybe verify what's available and the code that is used for without having to keep scrolling down through all the records. So for example, if I pick this and it shows them and there's 120 items in the menu options, you may want to just go ahead and use this to verify that the one you're looking for is there, and then just go ahead and pick it and know what number it is. This actually scrolls up and down so you can add or go to the one you want to. When you're on the actual iPad and you just flip this with your finger, it'll go very quickly scrolling through these. And if you see you're in the number range where you want to be, you can go ahead and just tap it. It'll stop right where it's at, or just touch it and hold. It'll stop where it's at, and then you can scroll and pick the item you want. Now, if you're on a Mac, Windows, or the cloud, all you would have to do in that one is just type in the number. And that hence is the reason why your menu manager is here, in case you wanted to verify that the one you're putting in is the right one. It'll also, when you say like you just go into the field, it will pop up a pop-up, but it doesn't have a scroller. Basically what you would do is you would type in the number and it would go right to that food item. You can then click on the food item, it'll enter it in the row. Okay, so we pretty well covered everything on this screen. And believe it or not, this is the main screen where most of the data is being managed by a server, and hence the reason why this application is simplified. It's easy to use. It includes most of everything you're going to be doing as a server within one screen. There's no need to tap on buttons down here at the top of the screen and keep changing screens to enter orders and making those a server nightmare as far as handling that information. Now, we've covered a lot of other things including in the screens, but we're going to continue and go through and explain a little bit more about the Do Action menus, use and how they're used in searches on different screens, because there are a number of screens in here we're going to be viewing and editing and doing stuff in. Not a lot of them, but just enough to make it interesting. If you have any questions and you need to get in touch with the support for the developer, you can come down here and click on Developer Support. It'll take you to our website where you can start a chat, or you can email us. If we're not there at the time, you can leave a message and leave your email address, and we'll contact you back. And you would put a comment in there as far as what your question is, and then we would go ahead and handle that for you. At the bottom of the screen, you have a video help screen, which is going to take you out to the main screen where you can watch the video like the one you're watching here, and for each different screen that we're running the videos for. Okay, if you have any questions, use the developer support. Thank you for taking this video.